folks, here we are at the top of the world, a place where we teach our City Kids Adventure Learning Program, or CKAL for short. This is a wilderness survival program that we offer to students who have been to the farm before and want to come back and experience what we started off teaching: teamwork and perseverance and so forth, but along with some wilderness and camping skills. Some of you who have been here before may recall the workshop that we do called From Scratch, where we teach that everything that we need comes either from the farm or from the natural world. And this kind of takes it along the same concept there, where Mother Earth or nature is going to go ahead and give us everything that we possibly need to survive comfortably out in the woods should the need arise. Our CKAL program is basically based off of the rule of threes. You cannot survive 3 seconds without a positive mental attitude. So that is avoiding panic, which comes from practice and preparation. The second is you cannot survive 3 minutes without oxygen. This is not going to be a first aid class, so we're not going to get into CPR or the Heimlich maneuver or anything like that. The third rule of threes is you cannot survive 3 hours without shelter. This is a big one. Shelter could be my clothing, the shirt that I have on right now, a rain jacket, or some means of surviving the elements if I was stuck outside. The next one is you cannot survive 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food, or 3 months without companionship. 3 months without companionship basically drives you crazy. Today we are going to focus on what's probably the most critical one that we can actually control, and that would be shelter. So we are going to actually teach and build a debris hut, probably the best and most effective emergency shelter there is. So why don't you come with me out to the forest? So here we are, we're out in the big forest. One of the first things that you have to be mindful of is certain hazards that may be when you go to erect your camp. Big ones include dead branches or branches that are hanging on other branches that may be dead. These are known as widowmakers. They could fall and land on top of you, causing great bodily harm. So we always want to look up in order to build down, so that we don't build underneath a hazard such as a widowmaker. Some of the other hazards that I look for would be insects, biting ants, or ground wasps or something like that. So we kind of always scratch out around the bottom where we're going to build our little house. I also look for poisonous plants that might be poison ivy, or an area that is low in the ground, which could collect water in a sudden rainstorm. So we want to watch out for hazards such as those. In order to build our shelter, we are going to need to find a tree that will be able to hold the structure in place, has a certain crotch in it, or maybe there's a stump or a log. We're going to need to have a ridge pole, which would be the basis for our roof, and then we're going to have ribbing for our walls. And then we'll use what we call lattice and forest debris for the insulation. So, over here would be a fallen tree, a branch that I could use as a ridge pole. I certainly want to have the ridge pole long as I am tall, with my hand extended above it. That should give me just enough room. In an ideal world, I'm looking for something to rest this ridge pole on that would be approximately waist height. I don't want it to be too big, but I don't want it to be too small. And in our teaching area here, we have the perfect spot in this tree. I have kind of 2 maple trees that are growing together. I can put my ridge pole right in there. Okay, that'll probably be all right. And I'm going to scope it out to make sure I can actually lay down in here. I want it to be tight, like a sleeping bag. And I'll even put a little line right there, little mark right here where my feet are going to be, shoulder width. And that's basically going to be the footprint of our debris hut. As I mentioned, I want to get all this scraped out. No ants, no bugs, no snakes, no poisonous plants. I don't have any widowmakers above me. My ridge pole right there in place, held snugly between the two trees. Next thing I'm going to do is look for some what we call or know as ribbing. And these will be sticks anywhere from my thumb, maybe a little bit bigger if need be. And we are going to just lay them from the ground up to the ridge pole, kind of into my little stencil or template outline that I created here. This is going to be quite time consuming. The more time I put into building this, the better it will be at keeping me warm and dry, cozy. One thing I have learned, if I have a ribbing stick and I proceed to put it down and I have it sticking way up the roof of my house, if it were to rain, this does a really nice job of capturing the rain, allowing the raindrops to drip down my ridge pole and saturating the debris down below, and I end up sleeping in a wet bed, not by my making. So when you're choosing your ridge pole and your ribbing, try to make sure that you get everything to the proper size as best you can. Next thing I want to do is I'm going to demonstrate putting some lattice on here as well. So what I like to use for lattice would be the really small twiggy types of things. And I'm actually going to try to lay as much of it on there as I can, even go sideways. All right, so this is kind of helping to fill in the walls. And what it's going to do is it's going to hold the debris or the insulation. So let's take a fair amount of this. And you may see I'm only building on one side, just for the example, but I've also learned that it's easy to build one side and then stuff the inside with nice clean debris so you have some nice warm insulation instead of stuffing it from the door. And then once I have the inside stuffed, we'll complete this on the other side. One side we put a fair amount of lattice work on there. Again, if I put more lattice on, it'd be that much more cozy of a mansion. As my mentor once said, building these debris huts, Tom Brown Jr. states that if you can get a shoulder width of debris from the ridge pole all the way around your debris hut, then you should be able to survive freezing temperatures outside. So the goal is always, at a very minimum, you're going to want to have an elbow depth of debris, but ideally up to your armpit with debris. The debris is everything that we see right here on the forest floor. There's no easy way of doing this, especially in a survival situation. If you had a backpack or a rain poncho, or if you want to spare your jacket, you can use that as an aid in collecting the debris. I just kind of do the survival shuffle, and I'll start a distance away from my soon-to-be mansion, and I just kind of, like I was dribbling a soccer ball, just kind of get that into one big spot, and I'll scoop it up, and I'm going to start tossing it on there. And again, I'm just going to do it on this side.